the worst body weight exercise and the worst way to train your triceps, the most pointless way to train your triceps, and the way you're never gonna do anymore, the bench dip. Why? It causes shoulder issues, and it's not really putting you in a position to really load your triceps effectively. So we're gonna move on from the bench dip after we go over a couple of reasons why we do it.
If you're looking at the bench dip, the first thing it does is put your shoulder into a terrible position. Specifically with a fully extended arm, before you even get started with a bench dip, your shoulder is not in the best position to translate forward. So when you feel that bump coming from the front side of your shoulder, specifically in that extended spot, that is the front part of your upper arm literally jamming out of the socket. So before you even get started, your shoulder's already in a very, very vulnerable position to get going.
Exactly. If I just try to get myself in this position right now as we're standing here with no load, I can barely kind of find that position. So it's not worth it. There's a whole ton of internal rotation in that position. And anytime we're in that position, even if it feels fine, the overall cost benefit of that over the long haul of your training just isn't worth it. So we've got to get away from that. I think that's a huge reason to really get away from the bench dip. My biggest issue with the bench dip though is just your inability to manipulate the load. So we like dips in general, and they can be a really, really great triceps exercise. But when you're doing a standard dip, you can shift your torso position to shift the emphasis of the exercise, but also to help you rebalance your body so that you can stay out of this awful position that I can't really get into right now. But when you're on the bench or when you're on any kind of box or chair, suddenly you have this thing blocking your torso, so you never get to shift your body position and you're always in that bad position.
Yeah, I mean, you don't really have any room to wiggle when it comes to your position, which is not great specifically for shoulders. Someone's mobility may be very different from another person's, and if you have no other options, then you're kind of forced into that really, really bad spot, which also then travels down the chain to the third thing that's a big issue, which is wrist position. Because your arm is fully extended and your body weight is in a forward position off of the bench, your wrists take a beating when it comes down to manipulating through that range of motion. So because your shoulder's in a bad spot, it then puts your wrist in a bad spot, and with your wrist in a bad spot, you can't maintain full range of motion or adjust the load. Overall, it's just a disaster waiting to happen when you do bench dips.
When you look at the wrist position, there are a couple of things we can maybe do to address it. You can do this off of your fists, you can move your hands into a different position. But when you're going through all that gymnastics to get into position for an exercise, is the exercise really worth it? The answer, no, which is why we have 3 alternatives for you.
If we're looking for substitutes for the bench dip, the first obvious one we're gonna wanna go with is a close grip push-up. The close grip push-up mimics the same motion at the wrist, elbow, and upper arm that's gonna utilize the tricep in the way you want to, except you're actually leaning yourself forward and putting the shoulder into a good position. So when you're all the way through the full range of motion, your shoulder's still in a nice spot, centrating through that shoulder the way it actually needs to. Now, the key thing to remember with a closed grip push-up is if you don't have prerequisite strength to do a push-up on the ground, you can always opt for an elevated push-up off of a bench or a higher surface. We don't want your inability to do a push-up to be the limiting factor through this. We want you to maintain the motion, but in a much, much safer space.
Exactly, and I think that's really important because a lot of people who wind up doing bench dips, you're doing it because it's a very beginner-friendly triceps exercise, but the close grip push-up is the better alternative to that. Another great alternative, when we're doing the bench dip, one thing we get to do is we get to drive into that straight arm position. Our triceps responsibility, or one of its key responsibilities, is driving this arm straight. That's what we have to do. So why don't we just focus on that, especially if you're a beginner, and go to a cable exercise known as the triceps press down. Now, this is not necessarily the exact same as a bench dip. We're working only at one joint, but you get to really focus on driving your arm straight, on squeezing your triceps, and you build a really, really good mind-muscle connection there.
Yeah, and if you ultimately want to change up the exercise, you can always do regular dips. And for a starter, it may be a more challenging piece of the puzzle, but you can always find ways by using assisted machines or band resistance or other options to help you do that classic dip move. Because when you look at it, it's essentially the squat for the upper body, and you can actually get a lot out of that tricep movement. So instead of opting for the lesser version that puts you in a really bad spot, you might as well focus in on the classic version that has been proven that it actually works.
Exactly, and keep in mind, half the guys who are doing bench dips, period, are doing this with 3 and 4 plates on them because they think they're super strong. So get off of the bench dip, period. Start doing regular dips, don't mess with the classics, and don't mess with the bench dip.